Drinking alcohol is a very popular aspect of culture in the United States and around the world. And since about 45% of Americans prefer to drink alcohol not at home, these people have to make it home, or at least most of them do. Now, unfortunately, in 2021, 43% of Americans admitted to drinking and driving, which is very concerning for obvious reasons. But one of the biggest causes for concern is vision impairment. Today's clinical trial quantitatively shows how drinking alcohol up to the legal limit of a BAC with 0.08 impairs vision. I talk about this trial and more, so let's get into the video. What's up everyone, my name is Henrik and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm breaking down a recently published clinical trial looking at the effects of drinking alcohol on vision and driving. Today's trial was published in April of 2021 by Dr. Francesco Martino and others from the University of Granada in Spain. Now we probably know that alcohol impairs cognition and vision. Lots of research has been done on this, but what drew me to today's study is looking at quantitative changes in binocular vision, and it's one of the most recently published trials on this topic. The researchers used a lot of complex eye tests to measure how the eyes react differently under alcohol intoxication, while studying binocular vision, which is how your eyes work together, as opposed to monocular vision, which is studying vision in a single eye. I think this study method is a little funny and entertaining too. It basically gets participants drunk, gives them mixed drinks and alcohol, and has them drive a car in a simulator, and measures a lot of eye variables too. Let's get into it. Jumping into the study design, this was a clinical trial looking at the effects of being drunk on vision while driving in over 30 individuals with an average age of 26. Participants had to have a healthy BMI, couldn't have any eye diseases, and had to be a social drinker without having any alcohol use disorders. All participants were part of the same group. On one day, participants drove a car in a simulation while completely sober, and on another day, participants did the exact same thing, but with a blood alcohol concentration level of 0.08, which is the level for legal impairment or intoxication in the United States and 44 other countries around the world. This method of study design is useful to directly compare participants to themselves, so they can see how vision changes in the exact same person. The two testing days were separated by at least a week to make sure there were no lingering effects, and to actually hit that intoxication legal limit, participants drank orange juice and vodka specifically. I wonder if drinking something like tequila or whiskey or different types of liquors instead would affect the outcomes of the trial in a different way than vodka would, but I guess this trial didn't look at that, and it's probably a less important result. For the driving simulation, it actually looked something like this, and that's pretty awesome. In that simulation, they were driving during the day, in good weather, with moderate traffic, and it was in 3 different scenarios: a long straightaway, a mountain road, and driving in the city. Unfortunately, we typically have to drive through bad weather, through traffic, and I would assume a decent bit of those people who drive drunk do it at night. And so in reality, this study was looking at some of the best scenarios for driving. Additionally, although it was a simulation, and although all participants were given plenty of time to acclimate to the driving software, the participants probably treated it a little bit differently than driving in real life, and I guess that makes sense. It is a limitation, but in reality, it's something you can't fix. I mean, you're not going to get participants drunk and then make them drive on the road. That's definitely a bit too far. Immediately before the subjects started the driving simulation, researchers measured a lot of different visual variables. Researchers measured how far you could accurately see with one in both eyes, so this is basic distance. They also measured something called fusional convergence. Each of my eyes can technically move on their own, but they're always supposed to move together to create one image. It's not like I'm seeing something out of my left eye and seeing something out of my right eye. I'm seeing one picture, and my eyes need to work together to do that. If I want to look to my left, both my eyes move to the left to create that one picture, and the ability for my eyes to do that and work together is called fusional convergence. Now, researchers also measure something called phorias at different lengths. Just like in fusional convergence, my eyes have to move together or work together to see the same thing. In some cases, they don't do that, and they don't move at the exact same speed or in the exact same direction, and they can become misaligned. Typically, when you're tired after a long day or functioning on less sleep, you'll have greater phoria or misalignment when looking at distance, and this can become problematic, especially when you need to drive. Accommodation was also measured, and this is basically the time it takes for your eyes to adjust to something new. This is what police officers typically measure with a pen light when they're checking if someone is intoxicated. In short, and in a pretty simple explanation, researchers measured how well your eyes can see in distance, individually, and together, and when working together, and how fast they can adjust to something changing. Taking a look at the results, I'll actually break it down by looking at different figures and tables because it's the easiest way. Looking at table 1, as expected, alcohol consumption caused a significant decrease in your ability to accurately see things at a distance. This is what we expect. Figure 1 here shows fusional convergence in a far scenario. Now, the thing actually being measured with fusional convergence measures strength. And you can see that in different testing scenarios, the ability for your eyes to work together and converge was reduced after alcohol consumption. That's bad. Figure 3 here shows fusional convergence in a near scenario. And you can see that strength is still messed up after alcohol consumption, but to a lesser degree. Figure 2 here shows phoria, which is basically measuring how misaligned your eyes are, once again. And unsurprisingly, the alcohol group had more misalignment when looking at distance, which is problematic. You can see that when looking at short distances, there really isn't a problem, but whenever you're driving, you're typically using longer distances. In table 3 specifically, looking at the AC to A ratio, which is looking at accommodation, the alcohol group had a worse ability to accommodate to things relative to when being sober. Now, looking at driving performance in table 4, researchers measured a lot of different variables like average speed over the speed limit, car accidents, and how far outside the lane you were when driving in the simulation. And you can see in the p-value column that if it's below 0.05, then it's statistically significant. And nearly every measure besides one, I think, was less than 0.05. And so the alcohol group, unsurprisingly, did a lot worse at driving than when sober. Now, I think this study tells us a lot of interesting things and really adds to the literature on how alcohol affects us. There are a few primary results to focus on. First, it's very obvious that at the legal limit, people were completely worse on all the actual driving standards measured, which makes sense. That's really why it's the legal limit. This has been replicated many times in the literature, and people colloquially know this as well. Secondly, the accommodation ratios showed that eyes are slower at adjusting to a changing stimuli. This once again makes sense. It's very heavily supported in literature, and it's literally used by law enforcement. Finally, the phoria and fusional vergence measures showed that the eyes are weaker at responding to stimuli together, and they aren't as aligned, only at the legal limit. This is one of the biggest findings in this study, and is the most unique thing in my opinion. If you drink, your eyes can't work as effectively together to see distance, and this is super important on the road, and this very well could be independent of if you feel drunk or tipsy. It's literally because your BAC is at 0.08. Specifically, this fusional vergence measure has been carefully validated in many different clinical trials out there, and it really indicates that changes in this are really important, can affect your daily actions, and so maybe because of your changes in fusional vergence are why drinking and driving is really, really dangerous when it comes to vision impairment. What I would have loved to see in this study is looking at 0.04 or 0.06 BAC instead. I use the term legal limit a lot because it's the legal limit in the United States and 44 other countries. But in reality, a lot of other different countries have different legal limits, and it ranges from zero tolerance, like 0 BAC, all the way up to 0.03, 0.04, 0.06. And China has 0.03, for example. Western Europe has a lot of 0.04, 0.05. And so I'm just interested to see if vision is impaired significantly at levels of 0.04 or 0.06, or only it starts happening at 0.08. But in my opinion, I think this is an excellent study that really follows the rest of the literature and shines the light on how alcohol impairs vision, and specifically affects binocular vision and how your eyes work together to drive. And so at least now you know more information about this. Looking at a nice summary with some takeaways, an April 2021 clinical trial looking at the effects of alcohol on vision and driving impairment found that drinking alcohol at the legal limit of 0.08 BAC significantly deteriorates binocular vision measures, which include phoria and fusional vergence, and other measures like reaction time, accommodation, and pure distance accuracy. Now, the research on how alcohol impairs vision and cognition has been long out there. That's why there's so much preventative education on it and so many different laws in place. But I think this study is really interesting because it literally uses numbers to show how vision is different at a BAC of 0.08. This is as opposed to using colloquial evidence or surveys, and why I was really drawn to this study. Now, problems with your binocular vision can really mess with your ability to see in the distance or react to changes that you typically would be able to react to if you were sober. The biggest takeaway is obviously, or maybe not as obviously because people still do it, is don't drink and drive. It literally messes with your vision and it puts you at risk and others at risk as well. It's also just super interesting to know that alcohol quantitatively messes with your vision at the legal limit of 0.08. Regardless, that's all I had for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel and check out more content. I hope you all learned something and have a good one. Thanks.